Good day. Welcome to another edition of Ibima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. Before we continue, I urge you to please press the like button so that we can get the algorithm going. And if you are new to my channel, I also urge you to subscribe. I have a question. The question has to do with morality. It's a moral question. It also possibly has to do with patriotism. News just emerged that the navigator of a Russian MiG-31 plane refused the princely sum of $3 million. The Ukrainians and the British wanted him to take the plane, fly it to Romania, and get the reward of $3 million. He will also have citizenship of a Western country. My question is a very simple one. Was that Russian navigator daft, or was he patriotic, or did he do it on moral grounds? Do you think he did the right thing? We just got to learn that a Russian was enticed with such very big, nice goodies, and he turned it down. Before we talk about this Russia, I should point out that a lot of Russians have been enticed, a lot. And a lot are falling for it. I don't know how much they may have been given. Some, ironically, never even got to see the monies that they were offered and promised. But we know that they were enticed and they carried out the Crocus concert massacre. They carried out several killings of Russian generals and even some Russian journalists. The SBU and the Ukrainian GRU have been very active in enticing Russians. Every day we see footage of Russians on their way to sabotage one Russian infrastructure, take pictures, and they get caught. The images are there. If you want to see them, they are very much available on X and Telegram channels. So there's a big covert operation going on now. And many people fall for this because they recruit on Telegram, they recruit on WhatsApp, they recruit on all those channels that are encrypted. But in this particular case here now, they went for a big prize. And what was the prize? One of Russia's most veritable aircrafts, the MiG-31. But in that MiG-31, there's a even bigger prize. It was supposed to have a Kinjal missile attached to it. So the Russian Federal Security Service has started an attempt to hijack a Russian MiG-31 fighter loaded with a Kinjal. Ukrainian military intelligence, with the support of British advisors, attempted to persuade Russian pilots to betray their homeland. Those who hijacked MiG-31 fighter equipped with Kinjal were offered a reward of $3 million. There was also a Russian who was also offered some money. We don't exactly know how much to defect with a helicopter. Defection is not new. We know about defections in North Korea. We know about defections in Soviet Union. And one did eventually defect. His name was Maxim Kuziminov. He defected with and hijacked an Mi-8 helicopter. Unfortunately, he was doing this without the knowledge of his other pilots in the helicopter. They landed in Ukraine, and those other two were killed when they tried to resist. And he was offered a passport. He went and started living the good life in Spain, but unfortunately, the Russians somehow located him. It's late now. It's late. That's all I can say. He was found dead in Spain. They are trying to finger the Russian intelligence, but nobody knows how he died. So we got this news that the attempt began in 2024 when a person introducing himself as Sergei Logovsky, a journalist from Bellingcat. You must know Bellingcat. Bellingcat is one of those British situated platforms for news. So this journalist contacted the MiG-31 crew commander under the pretext of conducting an interview, asked questions about sorties and service details, but after that failed, he focused on the navigator. So the pilot wasn't buying it, wasn't biting, and the man moved on to the navigator. Unfortunately, the navigator cannot fly the plane. He can fly the plane, but he can't land the plane. And he put forward this little problem to the security services of the Russians is saying that they didn't intend to let him land. They were planning to shoot the plane down over Romania and cause a false flag, a huge incident that possibly would have plunged the world into a major confrontation between Russia and NATO. Over Romania, possibly over the American base in Romania. We really don't know what the British planned. The British are the most active. They are even more agile and active in this war than even the Ukrainians. There's a lot of brain work going on in the MI6, definitely. They are very, very good at what they do. So the navigator was offered in fact, let me just I have a video here of the navigator talking about his encounter with those people who try to recruit him.
Осенью 24 года в мессенджере Telegram ко мне обратился неизвестный, который представился сотрудником международного журналистского агентства Bellingcat Сергеем Луговским. Впоследствии для подтверждения Сергей направил мне свою пресс-карту и предложил анонимно за денежное вознаграждение провести его консультацию по интересующим вопросам военной тематики.
По вашему мнению, каковы были цели выхода на вас Сергея?
Полагаю, что целями выхода на контакт со мной было желание Сергея скомпрометировать меня, чтобы впоследствии использовать это в интересах разведки. Так, например, в одном из разговоров Сергей проговорил вопрос о выплате мне вознаграждения за якобы переданную мной информацию военного характера.
Well, the navigator refused the money, and he got the FSS involved, and the security systems of Russia is really, really active. At first, they used to recruit a lot of foreign workers, Tajikistanis, and people from the poorer part of the Caucasus and the Central Asian states, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, who have a very large population of migrant workers in Russia. But now they are focusing on Russians, and they are using these Russians to do a lot of sabotage within Russia. So this is the question I ask. Would you fall for that? Or would you, for the sake of patriotism for your country, report whoever is trying to reach out to you? We all know that money is a big attraction for a lot of countries, especially from the countries that are poor. And it is for that reason why institutions like the CIA and the MI6 are able to recruit quite a lot of dissidents, people, because they promise them money. We saw what happened in many, many third world countries where it may not be necessary to point out which country, but it's an ongoing thing. Money is always a problem. It trumps patriotism, it trumps morality, but in this case here, the Russians had this matter under control. We'll be getting more information about what is going on there. And because it was such a very thorough investigation, all the text messages and all the communication and between the handlers and the navigator were presented by the FSP. It is irrefutable. The evidence is very clear, and the world is watching, and the world is saying. In fact, Lavrov says, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, was talking about how the British cannot extricate themselves from this one now. They were already being found out to be the main actors in the Operation Spiderweb. They planned everything, used the resources they have, extensive resources, and always money to put together that program that did extensive damage to the strategic bomber fleet of the Russians deep in Siberia, deep in the Urals. So this is why I asked this question now. Would you fall for it? Anyway, let's go on. Something very, very significant happened today. President Zelensky is rallying the troops. He has gone to a new city, and that city is called Kherson. He visited, and he went to encourage the people of Kherson that they are with them. We get the sense that there's a lot of movement in the battlefield, and because of that movement, the Russians may soon be approaching Kherson. One of the things that happens usually is that if President Zelensky shows up in your neighborhood, it usually is not good news. But in this case here now, he shows up in Kherson, and in Kherson here now, he had a meeting with his with people, different groups, different people. But he did something. He went to the gates of Kherson, and he put out a tweet actually about the heroism of the people of Kherson after they had achieved a major victory. This is what he said. In November 2022, our blue and yellow flag, which the people had hidden for months, once again flew over the streets of Kherson. We remember that joy, these tears, those hugs, the gratitude you feel when you see your people returning. The occupiers fled Kherson thanks to the strength of our people. And it is the same strength of our people that allows us to protect the lives, to rebuild after strike, which are practically a daily occurrence. Russia terrorizes Kherson every day. Ordinary people, ordinary life. That is precisely why Russia has no place here. Kherson is Ukraine. There are people who value life and truly rejoice when those who defend the life achieve results. Well, it so turned out that Kherson was a place. It's one of the Kherson city here now on the other side of the Dnipro, on the other bank of the Dnipro, is what he's talking about. And he did this. He went to one of the monuments. Monuments like this are iconic because it's places like this that ultimately the Russians point out, target, and make it a point of duty that when they occupy a city, they go there and post their flag. They've done that in many, many cities across the various places they've conquered territory. President Zelensky also met with some military commanders, and he had discussions with people there. And we should know that Kherson is a place where there's a big Russian community there. It's one of the oblast now that has been incorporated into the Russian state by constitutional means, that by referendum. And Kherson City is on the other side. The larger part of Kherson City is on the other side of the Dnipro, and that is where you can't change the fact that this is a large Russian-speaking community, and he has said that he's going to protect it. It sounds like a very ominous thing for Kherson. On the battlefield, though, a lot is happening. A lot is happening. And what is happening? Russia is making grounds and achieving territorial gains at a level that is the world, nobody has seen this in the war, in all phases of the war. But most notably, one of the biggest things that happened today is that finally we started to see that the people and the soldiers, exhausted soldiers in Pokrovsk, have finally started to surrender. The exhausted soldiers, the ones who have been encircled in Pokrovsk, but they had felt abandoned because, like the Russians said almost 3 weeks ago, they had encircled Pokrovsk and encircled Mirnograd, and they have now completely overtaken Pokrovsk. We saw them marching through the streets of Pokrovsk yesterday, but something very notable happened. They noticed communication between the soldiers and their commanders, and the soldiers were told to continue to fight even though they were starving and they had no food, no means of getting evacuated, and no medical help at all, or in any form or manner. And the Russians sent down leaflets to them and told them to surrender. it was not a hard choice for them to make. They started to surrender, and this is what the Russian Ministry of Defense published. So 25 Ukrainian soldiers from the 35th, 38th Marine Brigade chose life over death, and they surrendered. The Russian drones had been harassing them, and the Russians dropped the slave bullets. It was, and as the Russians always do, and the Ministry of Defense always does, it makes sure that they identify themselves. They use them as a propaganda tool to encourage all the others within that settlement of Mirnograd pocket to leave and not be killed. Because, like we said, the Russians have decided that whoever surrenders will not be killed. But apart from that, the surrender is the big news of the day. It seems like a lot more will be surrendering, but there was a lot of movement in Zaporozhye. The armed forces of Ukraine were forced to retreat from the areas of Novopenetsky, Novyi, Okchinitcheyi, Uspenikov, that one we already know. In fact, they withdrew from a lot of territory, vast amount of territory in the Zaporozhye. According to the military spokesman Dmitry Volozhin, the withdrawal occurred as a result of intense Russian assault, more than 400 artillery strikes per day, and the destruction of defensive shelters and positions. The strategy of holding off the Russians using just a few troops and FVP drones over vast stretches of open field doesn't seem to be working anymore. The Russians are now using brute force. They use the capacity they have. Besides, now, on a one-on-one basis, they have by far more drones. They are now the preeminent superpower in drone warfare. Either it is FVP drones, reconnaissance drones, or long-distance, long-range drones like the Garand 2 and Garand 3. They are now the preeminent users of war-proven drones, and they are now using it to great effect, both as a tactical weapon on the battlefield and as a weapon to inflict pain on the Russians across many cities as they attack both their infrastructure and their military-industrial complex. So Dmitry Voloshin said that the withdrawal is because of the unrelenting pounding by artillery, and we also know about the FAB 1,500, 500, and 3,000 bombs that they keep dropping. They've even used technology to improve the drones. So the bombs, they've added some little propellant on these bombs so that they can find their way. And the Su-34s and Su-35s that drop these drones can be safe much further away. And there's no report anymore of the shooting down of any Russian planes anymore. We've not heard that for a while now. Maybe helicopters and everything. But nevertheless, I should point out that the Ukrainians have been achieving spectacular success. Even before I got on this program now, there was a refinery very deep, 1,500 kilometers deep inside Russia that was just attacked. The Ukrainians are doing their own bit too, but maybe not on this scale. It's almost like a Mike Tyson versus a Bima Mungo fight. It's a mismatch, but they still are trying to do some damage. It is the stated aim of Zelensky that he's going to put damage. He will bring darkness and bring happiness to the Russians. He says it all the time. He believes it. He believes that he can do it. Besides, we have a saying back where I come from that if a blind man says he's going to stone you, that's Chinua Achebe, the great author. He says if he says he's going to stone you, it simply means he has a stone under him. We know with the backing of the British and the great strategies of the MI6, possibly also the Mossad, Zelensky may have a lot more up his sleeves than we really know. But it's just the ability of the Russians to escalate. And unfortunately, or fortunately for the British, it is Zelensky who takes the pounding. We're not getting a reciprocal hit on any British infrastructure, military infrastructure. Otherwise, it would have been a mismatch and they would have reconsidered now, because definitely, if it comes to exchanging missiles, conventional level, we don't know of anything that the British have to present rather than the storm shadow, which we've seen the Russians have decoded and the Russians have made not to be as effective as it's supposed to be. So I was just saying that there was a UAV impact on the Helio AVNT unit of the, let's just say, the oil refinery in Osk, Orenburg Oblast, deep inside Russia. It is nearly 1,500 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian controlled territory. Anyway, the the foreign secretary of Russia has continued to complain about the fact that in this time they need an independent, they need they are urging the Americans to sign a 1-year extension to the START treaty so that this world will not be left without a nuclear treaty between the two preeminent powers that control the nuclear bomb. Lavrov had a very extensive discussion with journalists today, and he mentioned it. He fielded questions on a lot of things, but this need for extension of the START new START treaty is very important to the Ukrainians. I mean, to the Russians. They possibly know that while it's a worry to them, they don't believe that it is a safe thing for the world to not have a guidance and a framework that controls the behaviors of the two superpowers regarding nuclear armament. So today was reiterating how he intends to continue to urge the Americans to sign this. Lavrov emphasized that Moscow's proposed extending the New START treaty for 1 more year, stressing that shared responsibility of major powers to prevent nuclear war. Noted that only Washington's consent is required for such an extension and that the announcement can be made anytime before the treaty expires on February 5th, 2026. Anyway, going on to other matters, European matters, especially since the Europeans are very invested in this war, we got to learn that they are putting together a flagship program where they are trying to raise a lot of money to be able to buy arms. That program is called SAFE. And countries have been allocated monies that they are supposed to contribute to the pot. They may not be in the European Union, but the European Union urged the United Kingdom to contribute a miserly sum of 7.8 billion to the defense fund. The British balked. They don't want to contribute. We should understand, we should know that in Europe, there are only 2 countries with a nuclear deterrent. The British have quite a lot of nuclear capabilities. They can defend themselves. They can do harm too. They may not have the vast amount of nuclear arsenal that the Russians have. But why should they? They were always a country that believed more in alliances because they're a small island. So they've always believed in alliances. They always form groups. You hear of them being in one group or the other. That way they can take on one hegemon, as they have done with Germany twice. And as they did with China, they always attack you as a pack. You and Britain fighting a war alone is not going to happen in anytime soon. It has not happened in several generations and several centuries. They always form an alliance, and they didn't need so much, but they still have. Them and France. Britain and France are the only 2 European countries that have a nuclear deterrent, and for that reason, they feel more confident in their own sovereignty and their own ability to defend themselves. The UK has told Brussels it won't pay up to 6.75 billion to join the EU's flagship defense fund, SAFE, which is meant to boost Europe's military edge after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The fund allows EU states to borrow big to build out defense techs like missiles, drones, and cyber systems. Non-EU countries like UK, Canada, Turkey, and South Korea want in, but Brussels gave a very slapped London with a high entry fee plus 250 million in admin charges. Anyway, I think the British are negotiating with they will if they want the van der Leyen wants them to be part of that that program, they will come to a compromise. We should know that even though the British have left the EU, they work with the EU, they work in close concert with the EU, and they have a very close partnership. You will not even know and notice that they are not a part of the EU, especially this Ukraine war has made them coordinate their relationship and coordinate their actions as a body. So you can very well say that the EU plus one, which is Britain, is responsible for all the actions that they have been taking against in support of Ukraine. But Britain has moved far and way far ahead of every other country. I want to go to the other pole of geopolitics now, and how they continue to assert themselves. Two very major incidents happened today. Today we got to learn that China has not particularly removed the export controls on American military companies from getting access to rare earth metals. After all, China is the country that they want to use those military weapons on. Anyway, it is to China they want to destroy. They want to use the missiles. They want to use the fighter jets in containing and destroying and attacking China. So it may not be in China's best interest to be selling weapons to Raytheon, to Lockheed Martin, to Boeing, to all those companies that are part of the American military industrial complex. China is now considering banning rare earth materials for US military companies, according to Wall Street Journal. And even though they have had disagreements, they've had this meeting between Xi Jinping and President Trump. President Trump has agreed. They agreed to a moratorium of freeing everything and freezing all the actions they were taking against each other, actions and counter actions and measures and countermeasures. They froze it for 1 year. It doesn't seem that the rare earth metals has been completely lifted for American military. We will get more details of it, but in all the communication that has been coming out since the meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping in Busan in South Korea, we've not heard much about the rare earth metal. But President Trump has always said that the Chinese have lifted the embargo for them. Europe wants to have a problem with the Chinese. It always are the small countries of Europe who always go and use the big institution of the EU to fight little petty fights. Like we saw the one with Lithuania. And I think there's a Belgian officer now. I think she's Belgian, but she leads a very critical organization. And she's calling for the ban of Chinese communication equipment in EU. There's actually been a ban proposed by President Trump in his first term, that when he was very gung-ho against Huawei, he wanted the whole of the allies in G7 and in Europe to remove Huawei's equipment from their country. Well, it so turned out Sweden, the headquarters of Ericsson, where Ericsson is, Sweden was the only country in Europe who acceded to President Trump's call that base stations manufactured by ZTE, and Huawei should be removed from their country. The blowback of the Chinese, as expected, was very swift, albeit very technical. The Chinese had a series of bids because we should remember China is the country where they have over 1 million 5G base stations. They are way ahead of everybody. And these 5G base stations have mainly ZTE and Huawei providing them. They used to also allow communication equipment from Ericsson and Nokia. But after Sweden imposed that ban, Ericsson suddenly started noticing that they don't seem to qualify for any bid anymore. Their market share in China fell from 3%. I think it is now 0.00000 something percent. They're no more in China. That's just how the Chinese do. And so we see the EU member states could force the phase out of equipment made by Chinese tech giants Huawei and ZTE in their telecoms network under the bloc's proposed ban. Bloomberg reported on Monday. The reported plan comes amid escalating trade tensions between China and the EU. Over the past year, Brussels and Beijing have clashed over what the bloc calls China's industrial overproduction, while Chinese authorities accuse the EU of protectionism. The EU banned Chinese EVs. China banned champagne, designer bags, pork, so many little things that affected ordinary people in the EU. They started to call for discussions with the Chinese. The same thing too happened with recently they tried to ban anytime they try to have an engagement with the Chinese and try to punish the Chinese for something. The Chinese now know that they have leverage. They are the biggest power regarding the fact that their market is a very big place where the small puny markets of the European countries have a bigger place to breathe. Germany, France, they all sell more of their produce in China, and that is the leverage China has over them. And this is one war that if they go into with China, they just are just going to lose. We know because this is, as much as America has a market that it has weaponized, the Chinese also can weaponize their own market. And trying to ban the the Chinese is not going to work. The person who is leading this is the proposal under the commission of Vice President Henna Vikkonen seeks to turn the 2020 recommendation of excluding high-risk vendors from the mobile networks into binding legal requirement. I think she's the one who is from Belgium. She's following suit with her other colleague who was from Lithuania. We don't hear the Germans do this. We don't hear the Italians do this. We don't even hear anything about the big European economies doing it. It is usually the small ones. An official who feels that a Chinese official may not have talked to her. She may have felt slighted, but she is powerful in the EU. In this multipolar world and in this age of the two superpowers, especially the two economic superpowers, the small ones who want to find out will find out the hard way. This is where I end my video for today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any views regarding the opinions I just expressed, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Until my next video, you have a good day.